I have a rather tricky shot here. It was taken at dawn when the sun wasn't quite up yet, and I really want to bring out all the detail and this wood. The background isn't so important, so I did like the two separate corrections on the foreground. This fisherman would cut out, and the background so it fades away a bit more. So we will start by loading a selection that I saved for you. Select Load Selection, and there is a channel called Fisherman, and I will click OK. Now rather than do image adjustments, which would be a permanent destructive change, I want to make sure that if there's any subtle color corrections I need to make, I can do that after the file is saved and closed. So in the Adjustments panel, I am going to start with Levels, and with Levels, I can actually stretch the dialog to see more detail instead of just being restricted to one or two sizes. This is brand new to CS6. You have the ability to make these as wide as you did like to see more detail. Now I have verbally clicked away, so no worries. I am on the Move tool. It didn't harm the image at all. As soon as I did Image Adjustments Levels, you may notice that I have a wide area just over the fisherman and black blocking in the levels everywhere else. Here is what I mean by that. If I take the highlight, this is no data, just flatlining. If I take the highlight slider and slide it to where the data starts, all of my highlight detail gets brighter. It's a very common trick in photo correction, so this is unretouched at all. Now I could take the midtone to the left, but I am starting to wash out detail, and I want to keep some of that rich contrast. The shadows, the darkest parts of the image, are looking flat overall, and I will zoom in with Ctrl+ or Command+, and it make the shadows richer. I will just slide a bit to the right until I am happy with the overall tone. There I am getting some nice rich color. If I fit in Windows with Command 0 or Control 0, I could see I had probably gone a bit too far. So I will back it down, and I often like to check myself by clicking the eye icon to see before and after. Flat and all, pretty boring. Just a little contrast boost using levels. I will also go to Vibrance. Vibrance is something grabbed directly from Photoshop Lightroom, an application used specifically for photography. I will take Vibrance and slide it up a bit. Now you could see this is affecting the entire image. Really the way to tell is this plant. I believe that the jade plant in the foreground, if I take Vibrant all the way to the left, it's close to desaturate. It strips most of the color. All the way to the right, it's going to booster rich in the color. But as I said, this guy is the subject. I don't want to affect everything else, so I will trash the Vibrance layer by dragging it down to the trash can, and before I do Vibrance, I will again select Load Selection and choose the fisherman. When I click OK, now I can add Vibrance. Now I have got another mask indicating the white area applies whatever filter or adjustment I made only to that fisherman. So now I will boost the vibrance, making a much richer photograph, but not affecting the background at all. Finally, I may want to do a special effect which is called Ghost in the background. So I will load the selection one more time, select Load Selection, choose the fisherman, and click OK. But this time I will select the inverse or the opposite, and I will make a new layer, Layer, New Layer, and name it White. The way I faked a ghost or soften a background is by making white only in the areas I want to lighten. So I will choose Edit Fill. I will select white and click OK. And now I have cut this guy out completely, but it's not really gone. You could see a tiny checkerboard area where the white is being applied everywhere except over the fisherman. That area is clear or checkerboard, indicating transparency. I will deselect, and now I can lighten the opacity of that later, so it's not paramount, and I am calling attention to just the fisherman. The last thing I may want to do is create artificial depth of field by blurring the background, something that most high-end cameras do. If you have a lens that takes advantage of that, and I often tend to play with the opacity until I am completely happy with it. But I will click on the background layer and choose Filter, Convert for Smart Filters, which will let me edit the blur later. I will double-click on that layer and name it Fisherman, and press Return or Enter, and finally I will run a blur on just the background. So I will choose Select, Load Selection, and this time when I choose Fisherman, I can invert to grab the opposite of the fisherman, just the background. So I will click OK. Now all of the background is selected. Filter, Blur, Gauzy, and Blur, and I will dial it up until the background seems not obvious at all. Still there, but not pronounced, and when I click OK, now I have created my final image. A great way to see before and after is to go to History and stretch your History panel. And if you click on the very top thing in History, here is before, flat, old, distracting background. If I click the last thing I did, Gauzy and Blur, here is after, rich, vibrant, improves contrast, and a minimal background. Be very careful to make sure, before you save and close, that you click on the last step in History, so you don't lose all your undos, but work to this technique on your own and learn how to make the subject of your photo popped out by using adjustments with layer masks and smart filters in order to blend away a distracting background.